Kiya Podcast would like to acknowledge that this episode was recorded on Whadjuk land of the Noongar people. We recognise our First Nations people as the traditional custodians of the land, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present and future. You went from Singapore to Perth to Gold Coast for IBA and then to Bunbury in the space of like a month. And how did you end up doing that? So
and leading up to that was Geraldton before that. So it was a really busy month. So I actually had a couple of weeks where I was pretty crook beforehand, so the timing of it was good. Mm-hmm. My trip to Geraldton was actually sort of like a last minute thing. Our netball team was playing up there in a carnival, so I thought jump in the car, do a little road trip. I'd been sort of stuck in my bed for a couple of weeks. So I'm like, I want to get out. So that was pretty cool. We sort of had our grand finals at Warwick, jumped in the car that night. I think I got to halfway Cervantes at like midnight, camped in the swag for the night, jumped up in the morning, went to Gero, and it was like really cool just to be out on the road on my own, cruising.
So you drove up and then drove back?
Yeah, drove up and drove back. Yeah. And then, I think it was 2 days later, flew out to Singapore. So that was the first step. Singapore was like really cool. It's been 4 years since we've been there after COVID and whatnot. And the boys ended up winning the gold medal in their tournament over there, come from third place in the qualifying and took that out. So that was sort of like the first thing. And then got home, I think at 6 p.m. I'd lost my SIM card in Singapore. So I got home with no phone, went straight to Officeworks 5 minutes before it closed, grabbed a replacement SIM or for another carrier and hooked it up. I think I probably got to bed at about 1 o'clock in the morning and then was at the airport again at like 5:45 in the morning. So, and then off to the Gold Coast. And I mean, the great thing with that was we've got such an awesome team. You were a part of that, and it was just like an amazing group that I didn't feel stressed. I thought, we've got everything covered. Everyone's been doing their little bit. So went to the Gold Coast. Amazing week that we had over there.
What was the time between, so you got back from Singapore, and then what was the time between going from, like, coming home and then going to Gold Coast?
12 hours. So by the time I got home,
you should have just stayed at the airport. I know. There's no point going home.
I know. I just had to pick up my bag, really. Yeah. But it was pretty cool. And then I think got to the airport. We had that flight to Melbourne, so stopped those. So I went sort of Melbourne in between as well. Saw a couple of people at the airport while we're there, and then got to Gold Coast, and it was just like, I think the second day was the cultural festival and then the games, and it was just like hit the ground running. And I mean, absolute amazing experience over there. The team's done really well, but it was just all the off the court stuff that was really awesome as well. The friendships we made, the new people we met, and just seeing all the kids that experienced something that they hadn't done before. So that was amazing. And obviously coming back from that, we had about a 3-day break, and then we were on the camp to Bunbury, which was another like awesome trip down south. Stayed at Rollins, the old Rollins Mission.
The mission there,
really cool experience. We had about 60 kids stay there with us. But then we rocked up to the clinic on day one, and we had like 50 or 60 kids that were with us, but then there was another 100 kids at the stadium. So it was like absolutely packed. Ran a clinic there, like our coaches did. We were fixturing up the tournament, and then the tournament ran like clockwork over the next couple of days. And it was just like,
that's really not the first tournament that you kind of run there. That's kind of like a yearly.
Yeah, that's been a yearly one. Last year we actually went the day after we got back from Gold Coast, so we thought we'll give us a little bit of breathing space. And last year I got COVID on the way home from Gold Coast, so it was like I didn't even get to go to Bunbury last year. I was sort of like on the phone checking if everything was going good and all the rest of it. But I was stuck in bed last time. So this time was.
But all the coaches that you've got, it's all like clockwork.
It is,
anyway,
it's cool. It's more like I'm missing out.
But
it was really amazing month, really.
Yeah, you would have racked up a lot of freaking flyers.
Yeah.
Like,
I know. I should have got a flyboys card years ago.
Oh, no. Yeah, well, that's like the amazing thing about what you do that I think goes unnoticed unless, you know, you're really in Binar or you know, close to you, is that time between actually doing stuff. Like every day is just something different, or every month is just another place that you're going and running clinics, and that's what I really wanted to bring to light.
Yep.
And it's just like seeing how everything comes together and how easy it is to kind of like at the actual clinics or trips time, how it actually runs. I think that's just the coolest thing, because when, you know, apart from yourself, when you're a part of it, it's just so easy to be able to connect to the kids, to be able to run and get stuff done from a like coaching and staff level. Like that's just the best thing ever. It makes it so easy. I think 100%. Majority of that is Troy Kelly as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think like when we look at our team of people, like, man, I'm not going to run no coaching clinics. You know, like I've done some of them things back in the day, or I've done coaching or whatever, but I'm not like, that's not my. It's not even my passion. It's not my something that I want to do, and it's definitely not my strong point. So when I see like you young fellas getting out there and just doing what you do, I think that was a real good highlight for me in the Gold Coast. Is like we had by far the youngest group, and then there was me and Ernie Dingo that sort of like up the age thing a little bit. Like, but yeah, like besides that, it was like all like sort of 25s and under for our whole coaching management group. It was like really cool, and everyone took their job really seriously. So I think it makes it really cool when you've got a motivated team of people that are doing things for the right reasons. They have like seen opportunities, I guess, grow from when you were, you know, at that age. And instead of being like, oh man, that sucks, like we missed out on that stuff, it's more like, nah, we want to get as many kids as we can into these opportunities. And it's just inspiring.
That's it. Like being the role model that they never had. Hey?
Exactly. And it becomes contagious, you know. It's sort of like that group just continually grows. People want to be a part of that. And then the kids are like connecting to people that are more like, well, they're closer in age, that, you know, like they know you were in their shoes not that long ago. You know, I still remember like the state champs from, you know, can't even remember what year it was where yous were playing, and it was like yous were in like under 19s, under 17s, and now it's like you look at each year, the year of birth.
That was when shorts was like the normal length.
That's right. Exactly.
Oh no, because you see them now, they're like up here. You just reminded me of that photo that we've got in the corner of Basketball WA, and then just you see, you know, pretty much from there onwards, because I think that's kind of when I first jumped on board with you guys, and came a part of the Binar family, and you see like where those guys are now, what they're doing, and how they're, you know, being the role model for the kids that you have now coming through. It's bloody crazy,
Yeah, a lot, 100%. I mean, I look at, like you mentioned Troy before, you know, like the funny thing with the coaching side of things, where he just like, you know, he's amazing in that space and he does so much, but he very first got involved when he was like in the under 17s team. So he would have been 15 or 16, training for state champs for himself. And then we had our under 11s. We had a coach assigned for that team for the state champs, and they were sick on the day, couldn't turn up, and we found out like last minute, like half an hour before training. And I'm like, oh, we need to run a session. And then Troy is just like, oh, do you want us to do it? And I was just like, yes. But he'd done that session and he'd done such a good job. And he had like, I think it was Terrence and Josh that helped him. And I was like, man, like, do you want to coach that team for state champs? And he did. So as a player in under 17s, he coached our under 11s to a grand final. They lost in overtime, but it was just like, just the way I could just see that leadership at that age. And I'm like, man, this is unreal. And same thing, we went to Malaysia in, man, it would have been maybe 2018, 2017, and he was the head coach. As an 18-year-old, he was coaching an under 18s team. And, you know, same thing, they went through, like, got to the gold medal match, I think it was silver, but they done amazingly, and he took it really, really seriously. He kept upskilling himself as a coach.
Especially being able to step up, like, with your peers. To you know, you can be like a brother boy, and then as soon as the game starts, it's like, all right, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in coaching mode and
Exactly.
still be able to keep that respect
Yep.
among the players. That's like commendable.
Yeah, and there's there's a whole range of guys that are doing Effie Garlett, who's not a coach, or like he'll coach at domestic level and whatever, but that's not his passion. But he is just like so onto it with just coordinating and organising. Kashayla's another one. Like, you running the cultural stuff, and then Josh and Kenny. There's everyone that sort of steps up into these leadership roles. That's the highlight for me more so than the on the basketball court stuff. It's like. Because that changes lives and that actually inspires them. Like we find the next group of leaders because they're like seeing young fellas doing it. So they're like, it's not actually needing to be someone that's like my age telling them, these are some of the things you can do. It's like they're seeing, they're seeing what you guys are doing and then wanting to be that way.
Yeah.
And you start unearthing kids that are like 12, 13, 14 that are like, you can already see them leadership traits. So that's definitely when I look at over the 11 years of Binar, that is the proudest thing of me is seeing the young leaders evolve and develop.
And was it Maney that stepped up in the most recent one? That was really cool to see. He kind of like was so confident in front of everyone. And seeing how young he is, exactly what you're talking about. How he stepped into that leadership role, and he didn't really shy. A lot of kids kind of shy away from doing that and be like, oh no, that's shame. Like I don't want to do it, and he was just so proud and stepped up. Yeah, like, 100%. Yeah,
we've seen it and there's quite a lot of the young leaders sort of like starting to sort of like show up. But like you got Domain and Ryan Colbung, they'll come down and coach on a Friday night. They're always like, do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do that? Or can I help with this? They love their culture. They're always wanting to represent. The Marika Garlett's another one who's done like teaching the dance to the girls and things like that, and the list goes on, and you start sort of seeing them at an early age. You can just see where they can be if they continue on that track.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really exciting. It's really cool.
No, that's definitely what it's about. So Binar started in 2011, is that right?
So that's when it started, but we didn't actually name it Binar till 2013. But the team started then, and we were just sort of like playing as a basketball team. But
how did you guys kind of get together? Because I think I met you 2013, and I thought you was Nyunga straight away. And because I remember the day I met you, we was at Kalamunda Suns Stadium. Yeah, and I was walking out and you were walking in, and it was you and Malachi was walking in, and you was like, you stopped me and was like, hey, you're Phil's son, because I get that all the time. It's like, you're, before anything, you're Phil's son. I was like, yeah. And then you was like, I seen you play state champs on the weekend. I think you hit like 2 threes back to back, like really good job. And then like I just felt like a superstar, straight away. I was just like, okay. And you're like, I'm Adam. I was like, nice to meet you. And then I kind of walked out and I was like, man, that was like the best feeling ever. That was like the first time anyone's ever said something like that. And then, so I walked out with my tail up, and, since then we've been able to make a connection with like the Binar boys. How did that sort of start? How did that connection where you kind of was like, all right, there's these boys want to play basketball and I want to create leaders, and I see this leadership quality in the boys. How did you get to that point and coming together? What was that like? So
organically it sort of went to that point, but to start off with, I knew there was a couple of boys that I'd sort of met through Midnight Basketball, Night Hoops. So Griff Longley, Johnny Mogridge used to they ran the Midnight Basketball and whatnot in Midland, and it was a program that would be for around about 6 or 8 weeks in different blocks of the year, and it was a diversion program. So keeping kids busy and active on a Saturday night, they'll give them a feed, do some workshops and whatnot, then take them home afterwards. And it was really, it was like an amazing thing for Midland that at that time. And from there, and I'd just gone down and volunteered a bit, and then just from getting to know some of the boys and that, like, had sort of seen, well, some of the kids wanted to play more regularly in a structured team and all the rest of it. So it started from that of like, well, how do we, register a team in the Midland competition, right? And then I contacted, so I knew there was like 3 or 4 boys that were keen. So I thought, we'll ring up and we'll put in a team in the local comp. And when I rang, I found out there was no local comp and they hadn't been for like a decade.
Yeah.
Which I was shocked because I grew up in Midland, always played in that competition. I had no idea that there was no competition at all in Midland anymore. So from there, I started ringing around and found that, Kalamunda had domestic competition that was probably closest to us on a weekday, etc. Checked with the boys if they were keen, and there was like a handful of them. There was, there was Effie Garlett, Terence Rodney Jr., my nephew Kenny Griggs, who didn't want to play. He got sort of like pushed into it. Yeah, did not want to play.
You wouldn't think of that now.
No, not at all. Like, he was this little chubby kid that liked to play the PlayStation, didn't go to school much in that, and basketball changed his life significantly. But he didn't want to. He came and played one game and he felt out of place and didn't really, he wasn't socially that good or anything like that. And his brother-in-law, Justin Lewis, actually was like, nah, he brought him back again. He said, like, you're playing. And then the love started sort of growing for the game. And from there, once he got the bug, it was like, that's it. Like, he lives and breathes basketball and he's an exceptional player now. But we had, there was them guys, Corey Bennell. Corey's still one of the best point guards I've ever seen. He was just unbelievable. And then, my son, Adam Jr., who wasn't even interested. He'd actually played in another team and he's like, I hate basketball. I didn't want to play because all these boys were playing. He, jumped in as well. And then Alex Duke joined a little bit later. And then we had a couple of boys from Derby. So that was where our first connection started as well, was we had sort of 5 guys and then there was 2 kids from Derby boarding at Guildford Grammar. It was Francis DeVilly and Tommy Charles, rest in peace. So they were in that first team as well as, and we ended up with 2 teams in the second season, but we had there's another boy, Callum Cook, Matt Boddington was another one that was in the first team before he started focusing footy. And there was definitely a few others that sort of floated in and out, but that was sort of like that core group to start with. And then we just sort of I guess it was a basketball team. That's all it was. And I didn't look at it as being anything that was going to grow into anything else, but that. It was just what's the barriers for these kids playing? Some fees for some of them, getting to the basketball stadium, and then just sort of borrowing some uniforms or whatever. I thought, this is going to cost me $50 a week. There's not much, and a little bit of my time. And I'd just, I was very active in my own sport. Played basketball and footy, every day of the week. Loved my sport. So besides probably the stuff I would be trying to do for my own kids and just kids that I knew, I was really probably more focused on my own. That was all my spare time was doing that, playing my own sport. And I'd torn my ACL a year earlier and I was coming back from recovery and I was sort of probably feeling a bit sorry for myself. How am I going to actually fill this gap in my life? And without knowing, that become the thing that actually and I still look at it now. I felt like it was the worst thing in the world when I tore my ACL. I really thought this is the worst thing for me right now. And then it became the best thing because
you kind of took it as a sign, a learning lesson.
100%. I would have still coached a Binar team one day a week and dedicated that night of the week to that and still done my own sport. But it grew really quickly. So all of a sudden it was every day of the week type commitment. So I wouldn't have been able to do it to that extent if I was still playing my own sport. So that to me was when I look at it now, 100% happened for a reason that I didn't know at the time. Yeah. And it's something that I've always now looked back on. I've had some big setbacks, physically, mentally, and even just things that have happened that I've felt, that's not really fair. But then I've always viewed it now as them things that happen and that sometimes there's a bigger picture. Yeah. And it's something that it's part of your journey and you got to just sort of embrace each thing as it comes and deal with that situation the best as you can. And I've looked at some major setbacks in my life that now I look back and think I'm so glad that actually happened. That's helped me get through to the bigger things, the bigger doors that opened for me was because of them things. You don't realize that it could be
a week, a month,
Yep.
years, decades before you actually
100%.
realize, like, wow, I needed that.
Yeah.
And just changed your whole outlook
Yep.
on sports in general.
Yeah, definitely. So I think from that, you know, like that was the first thing. It was this basketball team, and then you know, every week it's like, you know, you'll get to hear more of the kids and their life, and them car trips up to Kalamunda. I'll never forget them. They were just like this, like really, you know, I think Effie and Corey barely spoke. They never talked, you know, and then like. Over the course of the season, it'll be like little bits of like conversations, and then like you could see it opening up more, and then all of a sudden it was just like, you know, none of us could shut up in the car rides. You know, it was completely different. And I think, but that trust was really formed over that. You know, there was no mobile phones really back then, as far as like the kids didn't have any. I didn't have any contact numbers for anyone. I just like rock up at the house. They were usually out the front waiting, or they'd hear me pull up and they're out there. So I could see what that one game of basketball a week meant to them. And from there it was like we started looking at, well, what are some of the things we want to do, you know, and we saw that the nationals in Canberra in 2013. So we'd been like I guess a year working with that first group, and then we saw the nationals advertised for later in that like 2013, and we were like, we should fundraise and try to get there, and that's why at that time I went and spoke to my uncle, Robert Gardner, who was instrumental in us actually setting up as an organisation in the first place. Like, had no idea about that sort of stuff. We just set up as a sporting club initially, and it was like, I thought we'll be able to get sponsorship now, but it's not that hard. It's not that easy at all. But it was like, you know, surely people are going to want to help to get this team.
If only it was that easy.
Exactly. Yeah. But so we worked really hard to get that first team to Canberra. We were doing car washes. I remember the first car wash and sausage sizzle. We worked like all Saturday out the front of my dry cleaners, washing cars and everything, and then we made like $70. Like, all right, now we only need another 21 grand. So it was fun times, but it was club building. It was like, and you could just see the boys were working towards something, and we were getting like, you know, months away from going, and we're like, man, we've only raised like not even $5,000. Like, is this going to happen? Like, I don't want to let the boys down. So we were just like trying anything we could, and things just started to slot into place. And then we finally got there with like a month to spare of like, we're going to definitely get here. And that to me was a really pivotal moment. We went over to the nationals. We ended up winning. We took teams over. They won the 16s and the 18s. And then we come back home, and it was like, kids had seen what had happened. They wanted to be a part of it. We had our first sort of younger team. So it just started building, you know, and then the next season we had our first girls team. So it was just like, all right, now we are Binar, so we know who we are. We know what we want to do. And it was just literally around any opportunities possible. That's what we want. So we didn't know what we were aiming for.
So it wasn't even like, getting the public to find out what Binar was. You was trying to find that out yourself, all while doing all of this.
Yeah, definitely.
And setting it up.
Yeah, and I think like that to me is one of our biggest strengths, is that it wasn't about an idea and then we have to execute on the idea. It was like, we've grown from the start organically and adapted to what it is, you know, what are the barriers to some of these kids in basketball, but also in other aspects of their life. So then we listen to them. You know, we're guided, like we're really, really guided by our youth. Like that's something that is really important to me. It's not about us sitting back and saying, this is what we need to do. Like we have to sort of like look at, well, what are the challenges for them then, and what are the things that are impactful ways we can help. And then like it goes from there. And that's what, as much as it's been a difficult way to do it, because a lot of programs, etc., will start with like, you know, an idea and this is how it's going to be, and then we'll get funding to do this, and then we'll employ people to do this. We haven't had that luxury to be able to do that, but I wouldn't change it.
Well, you've done it the Nyunga way. Like, let's just start it, and then we'll figure out from there.
Exactly. So it's been, and over the journey, it like I feel like if we didn't do it that way, we wouldn't be aspiring to still be trying to do the things that we're still trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, we got big goals and dreams. We want to really just change the system. You know, we want to change the way things have always been and do things differently. because, like often when you have to make big changes like that, it probably scares some people or organizations or whatever, because they're like, well, it's just not done that way. But it's like, well, it can be, and then that can have a better impact. Like we know a lot of our kids don't fit into the mainstream systems in all aspects of life. And sometimes it's like, it's a lot harder to change a specific system or change an environment for them to be able to flourish in. But it might be harder to set all that up, but when it does, it can have a bigger impact than what you can just sort of have by trying to fit one individual into a system that doesn't really work.
Oh, yeah. And even for the individual to just be like, oh, there is another way. I don't conform to this. It's like, oh, I can still get to where I want to be.
Yep.
That doesn't necessarily have to be the pathway that I get it. Like there's so many side roads I can take. Like I remember when IBA first started, like one big thing with basketball WA was like, oh, we don't want that to be, they didn't want that to be a separate avenue to kind of take the kids away. And it's like, well, if it's an avenue that works and something where the kids are comfortable, the kids are experiencing their culture, and they get to be put on a main stage for basketball as an extra thing, then why is it a problem if it's a different route? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of it comes down to education. Yeah, I think there's a lot of times as people or organisations or whatever, they just don't probably understand why it's so important, or why, like from the outside, if you don't know enough about it, it might look like, oh, you're just trying to, form a rebel league or do this or do that to go around what's already happening. But it's really it's not that way, and so a lot of it is just education. I look at I mentioned to you before, my day started today with a Teams meeting with Paddy Mills. That was like amazing, and speaking to him around that program, also around Binar and whatnot. But it was just like, when I look at the IBA program, like what I love about that, it's actually really based around culture and identity. And then the basketball as well, and the pathways that go with it.
Basketball,
and that's what I love, because that is something, and it's not a knock against Basketball WA or against any other organisation, but they can't offer a cultural and identity the way that Indigenous Basketball Australia can. So that to me is like, the IBA stuff, there's pathways as well, and but it's also probably targeting a lot of the kids that aren't in the mainstream as well. There is some, but there's also a lot that aren't. And to them, if that's the first thing that engages them in something, and then they're like, actually, I want to play basketball, and then they can plug into the BWA system or a wobble club or whatever, then that's a real positive as well. Sometimes it's just about getting kids comfortable enough to get a start, and then move out to something else. So so it's been really awesome journey in that space as well.
And just even being put on that platform to have that experience at a young age. Like, I think the biggest thing with that IBA experience was the kids experiencing other Aboriginal cultures outside of their community. Kids that's maybe going through the same challenges as them, but kids that are actually like, hey, I know my dances too, and I'm proud of it. I know my language too. And then that sharing of languages and dances, that was probably like the biggest message of like what Paddy was saying, and what Paddy is about is keeping that culture alive and embracing it and being proud of it. And that's like something that our WA kids, I think, they embrace like really, really highly. It gets you got to kind of give them a little nudge in that 100%. Direction, and then when they get there, it's like they're off to the races with how much they actually know and that confidence in that knowledge.
Definitely. And I think part of it is like, because it was like a everyone buy-in type of thing, so it wasn't like 2 or 3 kids getting up and dancing. It was like the whole group was doing it. So then it made the kids that would have normally sat back and like, nah, I'm not doing that.
Well, we had
to do it.
We had kids like right up 2 minutes before the dance started saying, I'm not doing it, and then just before it was like, all right, let's do it. Let me quickly go get painted up and let me jump on and dance.
100%. And that was really cool. And then seeing all the other regions, the different dances, the different songs, all that sort of stuff. Like, to me, like that cultural festival to start it all off was like, I know like this morning on that call, like Junior was saying about how, if you walked into that stadium, you wouldn't have known people were there for basketball.
Yeah,
It was just like this cultural festival, and then it was like, oh yeah, there's a tournament over next week as well, like, which was really cool. Like I absolutely love that. Anyone that was there, no matter where you're from, what your background's from, you would have had goosebumps, and you would have felt like the energy in that room.
Yeah, even on the live stream, like we was getting messages of people, like saying, "Oh, I cried during the welcome," or I laughed at one of Pop Ernie's jokes when he was running around everywhere with the microphone. But yeah, that was just so powerful, and even seeing Benny getting up and dancing, and seeing the young kids doing the exact same dance, and those you see like the tradition of those dances passed on. It's just so powerful. Especially the TI dancers.
And I think it's really good for the kids that have not sort of, I guess, had the opportunity to, like, you know, there's every family's got different circumstances, and you know, there's obviously been things that have happened in this country that have made it really hard for some families to stay connected to their culture. So when that's been lost in a specific family and then they're reintroduced to it, like, it's a really empowering feeling for that young person. So I think that all of that stuff, to me, is really important for a young person's growth, of like knowing who they are and being proud of who they are and their identity. It's just like super important for them to be able to achieve on the sporting field, academically, in work, in life in general. So I think it's such a powerful part of it, which I love. That's what IBA is actually about. Is culture is the first pillar. And then there's the basketball and all the other things that go along with it, which is really cool.
This is a huge aspect, and it'll get you far. Like knowing who you are, being proud of who you are is huge. I think one of Paddy's greatest achievements, he's like, I think it was Junior was saying, was like, he won a NBA championship, but he also got to promote his culture and have his culture on the big stage in San Antonio, and then being brought to Brooklyn just for that specific reason, because of the culture that he brings to the team, and how these kids are getting that sort of knowledge and that sort of insight at under 14s is awesome.
100%.
No, that's great. One thing I wanted to do before we wrap up all this IBA talk, I wanted to get your reaction to this.
Was not an easy selection, an easy choice. But this said, for our IBA Junior NBA 2023 girl, she comes from Western Australia, and we never.
I got goosebumps again.
I start to swell up.
100%. Amazing, like, moment. Absolutely deserved. Like, when they said Western Australia, I was thinking this could be. There was 3 girls in our WA team that I thought, like, they were at, you know, times of the tournament that just ripped games apart. And I remember I spoke to them. Our three girls that went to the Junior NBA camp while we were there was Ava Rioli, Michelle Nignette, and Natalia Woods. And I spoke to them at the camp before they started, and just about they're all good enough to make it if they want it bad enough, and to just try to impress coaches in any way they can, from their leadership, from their talk, from all the little things, because it'll be them little 1% things that'll make the difference. And then look, they were outstanding through the tournament. Like, they all had moments where they just literally just lifted the team. Ava,
it could have gone to any one of them.
It
was just
I think Ava had some big game moments. Like, she loves the big stage and she loves to celebrate it. I love their celebrations, man. Like, I want to get a video of all of them, but
I don't know which one's my favourite, because she's got the I don't know how that happened. I don't know what happened, and then she's got the cold. She's got the sleeper.
I think that I loved them all, but that the cold when she when she got that N1 in the quarterfinal against South Queensland, tough game. She was getting fouled a lot, not getting much calls. Gone up with the left, like got really fouled hard and finished.
Yep.
And it was a game changer. Like it was just like, and the way she celebrated in that, it was like that you could just see the bench, everyone lifted, like it amped the crowd. And she's someone that,
and it's humble celebrations as well.
It's
not like
she's
an arrogant
never,
celebration. It's all about the humbleness and herself and the team. It's not 100%. About 100%.
She never gets in anyone's face. It's never anything like that.
It makes it even more colder, those celebrations.
I know. Absolutely. Like, and that's the thing, like, you know, because there's a fine line between like that celebrating and being cocky and all the rest of it, and she'd never done that. Like it was always just like really like in a way that was just like it's going to uplift your team. Yeah, it's going to like put doubts in the mind, like the confidence. It's going to put doubts in players that are like, oh man, like she's on top of her game. And she does it
with a smile too. And it's like,
100%. So I think, look, last year she came over as a bottom age player and she absolutely like killed it. For, you know, she rolled her ankle badly in one of the games, come back and had a dominant game. I think it was in the quarterfinals last year. So she loves the big stage. She's won a wobble, you know, MVP in the grand final, etc. So, you know, but I love that girls' team was just amazing, and they played the perfect game in the grand final. Like, you know, got there. You know, like last year they got the silver against a really good South Queensland team, and this year, you know, took out the gold. So it was just, I still been watching them games and watching the highlights and that because it was just, you know, such an amazing thing. But yeah, that moment, as well as Tamania's moment, the referee was just like, you did, you know, like shed a tear and you just that excited. Like I was,
You can't rewatch it without getting teared up. And being brought back.
That's right. And I was like just hell excited and everything and just going off from the side. And then when Ava come back and she like, you know, gave her a hug and then she just dropped her head and I could just feel her sobbing and then she wouldn't let go and I'm like nah. So then I was starting to cry and I'm like it's like stop it. But yeah, it was really good. It was
me and Effie had a laugh because we're just bawling in tears. And then on the corner of our eyes, we see like the cameras start to come closer, and we're like, just don't look. There's snot and tears.
But I mean, that's the cool thing, you know. You're sort of like living these moments with these kids of like, you know, just wanting the best for them and wanting them to take every opportunity, and you know, like her being able to go to Las Vegas now and do her thing. It's like it's just so exciting,
and she's built for that. And being under 14, you know, to get that sort of opportunity to work extremely hard. Like Ava and I, we probably had that many conversations because she was a part of my my woodwort team leading up to it. And we've had like that much conversations about confidence and taking the game on and seeing where her strengths are. Cause like, although she's tall, she doesn't like to get physical that much. Like she kind of shies away from it because she's, you know, she'll like hit someone and be like, "Oh, are you okay?" And to see her like getting to go to Vegas in is it July? August?
I actually don't even know. The funny thing, we're on the plane and she's sitting behind me on the way home, you know. And she just like taps me on the shoulder. And I was like, what's up, you know? And she's like, Uncle Adam, can you come to America with me? And I'm just like, as if we're like going to the shops or something. And I'm like, I think you might, when is it? Like, I don't even know. And she goes, I don't know. Like, but no, it was a good laugh. Like, it's exciting just to see, like, but when I look across that group, the boys and the girls, like, there's kids that are going to really excel. They're going to go places. You know, they stick to what they're doing. There's going to be kids that maybe didn't even have the greatest of tournaments there, but you know what they can achieve, and you know, if they stick to it, they're going to go really far in what they want to do. So.
Definitely.
And that's just one age group, so you can see how much talent's out there.
No, it's definitely definitely amazing to see how far the kids came in those 5 days. Not. You know, let alone over the last couple of years and stuff like that. Because I was actually going through some of your photos last night And I was like, oh, what photos can I bring up? And there's one of Effie getting interviewed on Channel 9 out the front at the front of your house.
That's
I think
right.
It was Channel 9.
Yes.
And then you've got photos of these kids when they actually babies have been around Binar and have grown into it. And what I found really interesting is Binar's not, like, well, I found out a couple, from yourself a couple of years ago, is Binar's not actually an indigenous organisation. It's just, it's 85% indigenously, like that's the players. Like Binar's open to anyone. If anyone wants to come and join Binar and come and play for Binar, like the door's always open. It's not just exclusively for indigenous people. It just so happens that 85% of us is indigenous.
Yeah, like 100%. And we always open the door to anyone. And it's funny because like we've had like literally kids that are like quite well off. White kids from different clubs and whatever like that. But they get involved and they just like they actually feel really a part of it. We've had that experience just recently. We done a tour. And like some of the, someone like there was a family that actually like sponsored like a lot of the kids to go across to Melbourne to Dandenong, and their kids were involved with it, and they've just said like their kids have never felt so a part of something. Like so we've had some of our guys sort of mentoring them kids and stuff like that, and they've had lots of opportunities to play basketball internationally at home, whatever, and they just said they've never felt that warm sort of culture. And I think like, I mean, that's been my experience, like as well, is like blackfellas are a very welcoming, warm community, and it's like you become family really quickly, or when there's the trust there, and like it's really accepting of everybody, within the culture. It's like really cool, and I feel like that's how Binar is. We don't. It's not even talked about within the kids. Like so, no one even like. Would even know. It's only actually been in the last probably couple of years when we started to track or everyone like a heat map of where people live, where they're from, their language groups, all that sort of stuff. Where we've worked out, there's like certain amount of kids that have engaged in the program or whatnot are non-indigenous kids. Within the groups, like
you just wouldn't know. It's more.
Man, we got like a white kid from California that like moved over here, Aiden, who's like a character, because like he came in and this was his first club when he got here. He met Malachi at school, and then become friends. Joined our Binar team that week. Then we sort of like, Malachi was trying out the Redbacks that year, so he went over to the Redbacks. They were in different teams, but he's still at the Redbacks now, but he loves coming to anything Binar, and he's like all the Noongar kids are teaching him all different words and stuff like that is like kid with American accents talking about, but he's just been accepted as like he's just one of the kids. It doesn't matter.
No, that's wicked. That's wicked. And then pretty much seeing those kids go off into their wobble clubs and then still come back and contribute to Binar, and it creates that bond. I think one of the best feelings I had growing up was joining Binar and being able to play with all these great people who have now become awesome leaders off the court, as well as on the court. Like like you said, Kenny, Troy, Josh Kelly, they were, and Alex Duke, like they were pretty much like the four biggest names of indigenous basketball youth, like growing up. Like I remember, like I've seen like Josh Kelly do some crazy things on the court. Like things you just like. Oh, he was just so scary, especially when he's got the shooting sleeves on.
It's like bloody scary. Just go home.
Just go home. You watch him and you're like, man, I don't know what he's gonna do. If he's gonna pull up, if he's gonna drive. And then you got like Kenny's shooting is just off the charts. You got Troy's IQ, which is off the charts, and it's just amazing to see how everyone's just sort of come on board and given back. Like if you wanted to, you could just stay home if you wanted to, and just let Binar will still be a household name.
100%. I think with that state champs team that you played in, when you look back at that squad now, thinking like that's an NBL 1 squad, man. Like if you look at that group, like you had Aaron Kearing and Anthony Edgar, and there was some like legitimate players in their prime.
Yeah, Francis as well. Francis is ridiculous.
Yeah. So it's really like you look back at, and everyone goes on their own journeys and does different things and whatnot. But I think the more, I guess, opportunities for the kids to stay engaged and stay a part of something, and that's what we've sort of found with Binar. Like when they're part of Binar, the door's always open. You might not see anyone for like a year. I get messages sometimes from kids that you don't even really know that you had much of an impact on, or that Binar did, and they'll just send a message out of the blue, like they haven't spoke to them for a couple of years, they're living somewhere else now, whatever, and they'll just be like, these are some of my memories of like some of the stuff that we've done, or and it's like really like you just opened your eyes and you're like far out, like didn't know that even was that impactful or that it meant that much to that person.
And that's how you know you're on the right path.
100%, and that, like, I see now of like, you won't know how many kids you're impacting. Troy won't know how many he's impacting. Talia, Talisha, Kashayla, the list just goes on and on and on of like they're having that flow-on effect to someone else. So, that's what I love. It's like, yous all young fellas and yous aren't worried about just like your own, I'm just focusing on me. And usually it's like people that are a bit older that want to give back and they want to this and that. So to see young people doing it at an early age from pretty much, before they've even finished school and they're already still giving back, I love that because that means it becomes the normal thing to do for the next kid. So when they're older, they're going to give back, and it's just like it's going to have a flow-on effect, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it's about. Well, to wrap up, I've got 2 questions there.
I know one of them.
I know, there's one of them. That's the third one. So why do you do what you do? Is the first one. Is why do this? Why do Binar? Why start it, and then seeing how successful it is? Why do you keep doing it?
So I do what I do because if I see someone in need, I'll always want to help. I always want to do what I can do to help them. That makes me feel good inside. Like it actually gives me a lot of satisfaction in seeing that, like, all of us need help in some ways. It might be, but it might be something really simple that they actually need help with. It might be as simple as like helping them with the registration that they haven't got access to be able to do on a computer or whatever. It might be, dropping someone else off somewhere, or it could be just literally just finding a team for them to play in. But there's all different needs for different people. But sometimes them little things are actually big barriers. And then if that doesn't, like, if that little thing isn't done, that might be the thing that actually stops someone growing. So to me, it's really important that I guess that I can give back. People gave to me. I was definitely someone. This is like my motivation is not basketball. Like as much as it is the thing that really engages the kids, and it is the main thing that brings all the kids in the first place is predominantly basketball. My teenage years were not, I was not making good choices. I was on a bad track. Now when I look back at the things that happened where I was spared things, I was looked after at times where I'm like, man, I should have got in a lot of trouble for that, or I could have died at that point, or I could, all these different things. And I sort of feel like, I was sort of spared and I was given opportunities, and there was things that happened that I know would have been absolute life-changing moments that I sort of like, that went a good way for me. And I feel like someone was looking out for me, and people were looking out for me to make sure that didn't happen. Now, when I got a sort of second lease on life, and when I look at it now, like, I'll do anything to stop kids going down a path that is not going to be good for them. And because not many come out of that. When I look at a lot of my old mates from them teenage years who, like, I have so much like love and respect for, we don't see each other much now, but them people like really helped shape me. And I've seen a lot of them that have passed away, or they've been locked up, or all these different hardships in their life, but the respect is really there, and they sort of shaped me into a person that now I would feel guilty if I wasn't doing what I was doing. Like I feel like it's my duty, my responsibility, because I was given the opportunity to be able to do this, and that could have easily been taken away from me. So that's my probably inspiration to do what I do, is more around helping people get on an even playing field to be able to achieve, and helping people stay on a good course in life that they're going to make the rest of their life easier than if they make a bad choice that affects their whole life.
Yeah, that's it. And it's like you said, like there's, you know, there's always that turning point. There's always multiple turning points where you could take a left turn, or people have taken a left turn, and then it's like, all right, it's not, and just realizing, look, it's not that far to get back on your path, or you know, to keep, you don't have to keep going down this path just because you've taken a left turn or something like
definitely.
that.
And I think, you know, as a society and that, we're very judgmental and we're very quick to write someone off and whatnot, you know, and when I look at it, like, I would have been one of them kids that people would have written off. Like, it would have, you know, if people didn't believe in me, like I had a lot of people, obviously my parents and my family and whatnot, that supported me through times where they probably should have been like, stuffing me, you know, he's stupid, he's making his own choices. And, you know, I had like Tony Marachi was a really important mentor for me as a teenager, and others, Graham Cox and a few others that were really important in them teenage years. But when I look at, you know, it's like nowadays we might see things on the news and whatever, and like, you know, a kid's done something wrong, it might, you know, might be in a stolen car, might be whatever, and people like write really horrible things. And yet, you know, and I've had sort of some falling outs with people over things like that, whatever. I've said, you know, I was that same kid in a stolen car, or I was the same kid doing this and that, but you sit there and praise me up and say, oh, I'm doing all this great stuff, but you're giving up on a kid that's 15 years old or younger.
Wow.
So that to me is like where I think, like, we can't be like that. We got to try to uplift and help, or if you're not in that space to do that, then don't say anything at all. You don't have to like make it worse, and you don't know someone's journey. You don't know what's led them to that. So, you know, it's really around like not judging people for, and especially like young people that are still finding out who they are. You know, like not judging them and not sort of like putting them in a thing of like, oh, they're no good, they've got no life ahead of them, because I know for a fact you can turn things around and you can make a big impact.
No, that's so true. And second question is, what would you tell your past self when you first started your journey? Because, you know, we're 2023 now. It was kind of established pretty much formally 2011. But like you said, that journey would have started before that. When you realised, what would you tell your past self?
I think there's a lot of things I'd certainly do the same. I think what I would definitely do is tell my past self to not get too down at the setbacks, not get too down when you feel like, you know, you're working two jobs to try to make sure, like, you know, so Binar's been my sort of voluntary role and my dry cleaner's been my actual job. And then at times there's like, you know, the balance is really swayed to like, I'm way more Binar than I am at the dry cleaners, etc. And that's sometimes caused financial issues, it's caused whatever it might be, but I've followed my heart of like where I feel like I've needed to be and the importance of what I'm doing. And I think at times you have moments where you're just like, man, I'm doing all this and we're still not getting support, we're still not getting the help we need and whatever, and you start to question, like, you know, do I need to just stop doing it, you know? And I think to embrace them times of like when you're feeling that, and probably how you deal with some of them moments where there'd be times where it probably mentally would get me really down and I'd be like really flat and I like feel like I can't do it anymore and whatnot, but there was always something that would push me forward. I think during them times to not be so hard on myself, like to just be like, nah, that's part of the journey, and embrace it, take it on. Things are gonna suck, things are gonna happen that aren't gonna be kind, and you just have to take that on and keep pushing through it. I feel like I've done that pretty well, but there's definitely been at times where I've been really like down in the dumps and hard on myself and feeling like this is never gonna get better, it's never gonna change. And I think opening my eyes up to the whole system of like the different things that are in place that make things harder than they actually need to be, and trying to work through that. But I think telling myself to just like embrace them times and know that it's part of building you to where you need to actually get to. And I probably, the last few years I've been really dealing with that stuff a lot better. And when them times come, like after this last month, I would normally, like, I remember went to Cairns in 2019. I crashed badly when we got back because I was like, it was such an exhausting time to organise 70 people to go over to Cairns, go in this tournament, come back home, and I mentally just spent the next couple of weeks. I didn't want to get out of bed. I was just like flat as, and I've sort of like worked out how to, and that would happen after if we had a big, like a Binar dinner or a fundraising event, whatever it might be, any big event that took a lot of planning. At the end of it, where everyone was like, oh, this was awesome, and they're having fun and that, I was crashed and I was like in a mentally really bad place. And I've probably learnt how to start to deal with that. I can feel that crash coming. And after, Geraldton, Singapore, Gold Coast, Bunbury, like this should be where I'm crashed, and I'm like, I can't talk to anyone, I don't want to do anything. Like I've found this like way of needing to still keep active, keep busy at a pace that I don't have to do anything a million miles an hour, but do things that actually make me happy. And this whole last week has literally just been reconnecting with families about the upcoming season, helping with registrations they might be stuck on, whatever it might be, like just being down in the Binar office with the other people.
Like you said, the little things,
the little things, the little things. And I've loved that. I've actually, yesterday I'd done like a 16-hour day, and I was like, I felt at the end of the night, I'm like, man, I feel great. I feel really happy. I feel happy in my heart. Everything's good. Got up this morning, like I said, first call in the mornings with Paddy Mills and the rest of the crew.
Yeah, what a way to start. And then
and like hearing all like the way he speaks and that, it's like inspiring. So like I get off that call, go down to work, and then basically all day just talking to so many different families and so many different people to try to just help with little problems. And we just, today was just a very productive day, and then come out here and have a yarn with you. Like, it's like, I feel like, in a really good space. So what I'm probably trying to more focus on now is when things get tough, I'm just going to call someone that like, go see someone, call someone, do something that I love, like go for a drive, whatever it might be. So deal with the not have this massive big thing and then crash afterwards. Just sort of like work at a pace, keep moving, but at a pace that I'm
doing
comfortable
things you
with.
love. Like one of the sayings that like I love that one of my American friends told me when my uncle passed, and it stayed with me ever since. Because I was in a bit of a wreck, and I kind of came to him and was talking with him, and he's like, hey, and he listened to me out and was nodding his head, and I told him the whole situation, and he said, look, man, you can take this in a positive way or take it in a negative way, it's up to you, but the sun's coming up tomorrow, whether you like it or not. And he goes, you could have the best day ever and everything's going right, and you feel like you're on track, gonna hit your goals, everything, the sun's coming up tomorrow. You could have the worst day, feel like everything's just going down, like, why am I even doing this? Is this even going to work out? And it's just constantly in your head. But you've got to tell yourself, the sun's coming up tomorrow. It's still another day that you got to get after it, and there's still so many things that you can do and people you can help.
Nah, 100%. Yeah, that's awesome.
That's it. Well, and thirdly, no, thank you for coming along. And we didn't really put a time frame or anything like that, because we know once we get talking, we're off after that. For sure. Thanks for having me. It's actually first time I've done sort of something like this. I've had I was a very shy kid, and even as a young adult, I was like, I don't want to, I couldn't talk in a camera, I couldn't talk in front of a crowd, anything like that. And now it's sort of like, I feel like when it's something you believe in, when it's something that you're actually, when you got your own knowledge in something and you believe in something and you're confident in that, then, and you can just, it just comes off the tongue, it doesn't matter. Exactly, you just do it. No, that's it. Definitely appreciate you. I know, like, the casting crew, definitely appreciate you coming along. We got the cameraman there, all the lighting there. Awesome. Well, thank you for that.
No worries, man.
It's good.